So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, this is the NIDO Radio, South Savannah, Georgia, as well as Wellness and Wahala podcast. Today, we do have our two of our most important people that were able to accomplish something that we really need to talk about. They were able to write books about themselves and about their life and the ups and downs they have been through. But today, they're here with me for us to discuss about it and also for them to be able to tell the world what is behind this book, what really motivated them, what really inspired them, and gave them the zeal and the willpower to be able to make it happen. Tonight, I will say I have here with me Dr. Tomi Ademokun, who is also the Vice President of NIDO South Savannah, and as well as a board member of the Nigerian Diaspora Board of Trustees member. And also we have our youth ambassador as well, who is Mr. Nnamdi Kanaga, who is also a movie producer and somebody that is well known in Nigerian Nollywood. He's been living in America for quite some time right now, and he has been able to release about a couple of movies and still working on so many other projects. So please join me and welcome these two most influential people of our lifetime that have been, trailblazers in different areas of life and have been making trends, creating positive trends in over the whole Nigerian American society as well as in Nigerian society. So welcome this evening, Dr. Tomi, and welcome, Mr. Kanaga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I know this is quite coming. This is quite a big news coming. Like I said and suggested, this is absolutely a new trend that both of you are setting when it comes to Nigerian in diaspora Americas. And this is the first time actually a member of NIDO has been able to write a book and be able to tell it all. Pretty much a book that says tell it all. The up and down, the wins, the losses, and of course the lessons learned along the line. We would like to have an honest conversation. I'd like you guys to tell the world what really actually inspired you to write this book. I will start with you with Dr. Tomi, who wrote the Faith, Fire, and Favor on the Diplomatic Duty. Please, can you tell us more about this book and how the whole idea came into making?
Well, thank you, Mr. Collins, and also Nnamdi, who I admire, and who was our youth ambassador that was at our AGM. I'm so proud of him, and he and so many other authors before me, because he wrote his book before me. I've actually had this book in my heart for about many years. I said, 4 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm gonna write it when I turn 40, and then things happened, so much wahala, and I procrastinated. In 2019, I'll go back to, how I even came up with the name Wellness Wahala. So I'm a public health doctor of public health epidemiologist. So of course I have wellness in my career background. And wellness can be not just physical, your health, but also spiritual, emotional. I've been, on a roller coaster with wellness. Even though I am a subject matter in my career, but there was a lot of trauma that I was going through, suffering and smiling in my personal life, hence the Wahala. So that's why I said I came up with the catchy phrase wellness and Wahala, because everybody in life goes through Wahala. So I started a podcast to try to get different subject matter experts from different fields to come on the show to talk about how they overcome Wahala in their various field. But I have been privileged to serve in many nations across Africa, the Caribbean, the Pacific Island, Guam, American Samoa, Republic of Marshall Islands, and across the US. And hence why my subtitle is Faith, Fire, and Favor on Diplomatic
Amazing,
Duty.
amazing.
It just came out So it's on pre-order, but it officially launches on my birthday, August 5th. But I thought that it's important for such a time as this because I think the Wahala has increased in the world, that what people are going through, even in my personal life, I'm still going through another cycle of Wahala. Federal workers have lost their jobs. Sadly, I was one of them. And, after serving our nations across the sea, overseas as a diplomat. So, so many people think, oh, told me everything is okay. No, my dad came into the U.S. On a federal government of Nigeria scholarship, but later he was driving taxi, so he can make some money. Because he didn't have a work permit, he eventually got deported, even though he appealed and tried to do things the right way and legally. Sadly, he got deported by some very bad immigration officers that beat him up, and you know um, and eventually we were able to appeal, and we got a really good Jewish lawyer in Chicago. And even after we won the appeal, they still did not allow my dad to come back to the US. Hence why even my whole life I said, because my dad's life, I would say, was silence. That's why I now said, okay, I'm going to be the first in my family to become a US government diplomat. The same government that tore my family apart, the same Wahala that I went through. Some of my good friends, when I became a diplomat, were immigration officers and said, look, all of us are not the same. Like in your fingers, all hands are not equal. So I now started doing more research on immigration. And in my personal life, I've helped so many people file for EB1, EB2 to get their green cards, Vietnamese, Nigerians, Blacks. I've contacted senators on their behalf to fight to appeal their cases, because a lot of immigration lawyers that are scams that, would take thousands and not help them. I said, I'm going to do my research because I don't want people to go through the same Wahala pain that I go through. So my story, excuse me for being emotional, is it runs deep. You know, Many people, they see me all the time, and I'm a firstborn, so I like to always make everybody else happy, but nobody really knows the journey that I went through. But you might go through the fire, you won't burn. Like, that's one of my favorite scriptures. In each of my chapter, I leave you with a faith scripture, I leave you with a fire scripture, an African proverb, and I also leave you with favor, because it's a cycle, right? So if you don't put God as your foundation, and even reading like Nnamdi's book, I know you're going over to him. When you go through really deep situations in your life and really deep wahala, if you don't have God, like, I would not be here. You see what I'm saying? I would not be standing,
Absolutely,
because it's
absolutely, yeah.
only God that can put you through to come out victorious when the enemy wanted to knock you down. But yes, over to you, Sal.
Absolutely. Your story kind of holds. It goes way deeper than actually what it is actually, and based on your explanation, I think there's a lot that people can learn. There's a lot that people can emulate. There's a lot that people can assimilate. Just like what you said, having gone through all the things you've gone through, and at the same time, making that sacrifice to serve the same government that tore your family apart. To me, I think that's a win. That's a win because what you did was you proved that irrespective of all the challenges, the resilience, irrespective of all the thorns and all the wahala that they put you through, you were able to still rise and be able to wear the uniform and serve that country and be able to give in your best. So I think this thing goes way deeper than just a book. It's more of an inspiration to younger people or to different people in our society that are going through a lot, to be able to believe and know that one day things are not going to be the same anymore the way it is right now. You will definitely overcome those challenges and you will sit down to tell those stories, just like you told in your book. Kudos on that. I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you,
You
Sal.
know, coming to you on your own side, Nnamdi, you wrote your own book. You called it Onwuchekwa. I know it's an Igbo name, Onwuchekwa. Can you really tell us more about this Onwuchekwa? You say the dead waits, like dead should hold on.
Mm-hmm.
What really inspired you? What motivated you to be able to work on this book? And, what story are you trying to tell? I know it's more of a self-reflection, deep thought about something, maybe having gone through some challenges with death, in the family, could be death of a family member, and you were able to build and rise against the death, made peace with the dead, and be able to, tell the story. Please, can you tell us more about it,
Yeah,
Mr.
definitely for
Kanaga?
sure.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Dr.
much.
Tomi. You're making me emotional, and I was like, I'm not gonna cry in this podcast or do anything, but hearing you speak it's just making me feel, and I think that's part of what storytelling is about, is being able to relieve and release those emotions that have been, held for a long time. Even writing your book is not even enough to let go. Sometimes you just need to talk about it and let go
Absolutely.
of it. So which is really amazing. And thank you for being vulnerable with your story. So mine is again is Onwuchekwa, which means, Onwuchekwa in Igbo means death waits. And it's a very popular, I think it's a very popular name within the Igbo land. Most surnames, most people bear Onwuchekwa as their surname, but in my
Yes.
case, it was my younger brother's Igbo name, which
Okay.
when growing up, I did not really understand why they would name him such a very interesting name, But after he passed away, I started realizing um, the power of that name. For me, I lost my younger brother on the 19th of April 2015, 2014. I was an undergrad in UNN at that time. So um the last time I saw him was when he was when he got into UNEC, University of Nigeria's Enugu campus. He got into school. So it was on his matriculation day. We were all there and all that was the last time I saw him. And the next thing I heard was he died. So that was the first time I was losing a sibling. I've never lost a sibling before. So that was when I lost a sibling. And when I see people lose their brothers, their fathers, and all of that, it doesn't really hit you like that. You feel pain, you feel sadness, but you don't feel that exact pain that comes with losing a sibling or a family member. So when my brother passed away, I was the one that got the call. They called me. So I was on Easter Day, and my phone rang, and then it was his number calling me, and I was like, and I just funny thing is I had spoken to him an hour before, so he told me that he was really relaxing and enjoying and everything. So then few hours after, I get a call from his number, and I'm like, hey, how are you? And then the person on the phone was like, it's not your brother. I'm like, who is this? And then there was silence. I'm like, who is this? Who is this? So when that silence happens, your mind starts to play with you, like, okay, what's going on? Something is wrong.
Absolutely.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
because it was a very long, I can't even describe how, but it was a very, very, very long silence. And I'm like, why is this person quiet? What's going on? Peter, I was calling his name, Peter, Peter. It was silent, nobody was talking anything. And I started becoming afraid. I'm like, okay, something bad has happened. What's going on? And then the next thing I hear was he's dead, just like that. And that thing just really, like, I was like, wow. I didn't really understand. I was like, it took me a while to process um what that whole thing was happening. So anyway, when that whole thing happened, it really broke me because this brother of mine, we were both born on the same date. I was the older brother, but we shared the same birthday. So all the birthdays of my life was with him. So suddenly he's no more there. And it took me a while to get used to that. Anyway, fast forward to 2019, I was already in America for my master's in Montana State University. So I took a class called memoir writing. So that class, they told us to write a memoir for the semester, and I didn't really know what I wanted to write about. I didn't know what I wanted to write. I didn't have anything to write about at all. So then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh wow, let me write about my brother and just like maybe use the opportunity to like remember him and tell the story. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I wrote this book actually in 2019. And
Oh, wow.
yes, so but I didn't publish it. I just wrote it for my class, and I got an A for the class. So then around April of 2019, which was around my brother's anniversary. I think at that time it was maybe 7 years or six. I don't know the exact time, but it was his anniversary because he died April 19th. I think around April, maybe 10, 11, 12 or thereabouts. I was planning, I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I should release this book as an article. Maybe I'll condense the book and release it as an article on a paper or a magazine or whatever in 2019. So I was planning to release it in 2019. And then in May, my dad dies.
Mm.
Then it was almost like all hell was just broke loose because I was also again like my brother died when I was in school. My dad died when I was in school. I was just in second year, first semester of my grad school, and it was just crazy. It was just bad. I was like, I couldn't understand what was going on. So I said, you know what? I was trying to understand my brother's death by writing this book almost 6 years or 10 years or 6 years or 7 years after. And then my dad now dies. A whole new grief level again, another new wahala, like you said. So I just packaged the book. I just dumped the book somewhere. I just did not want to. I just left the book somewhere because I started navigating my dad's death. So all of that happened, 2020, horrible, horrible year for me. I was just like existing in this life. I was just there because pandemic. Then my dad left. There was nothing. Then my mom and my two siblings, all of the wahala was on my head. I was trying to struggle to survive in America. Then my mom, there was all the my mom was working in federal government. They were not paying them their salary for almost how many years? Pandemic, my brother, my sister. So all the rent, feeding, school fees, everything was on this person's head. That was still trying to understand and navigate his own life. Just like you, I'm also a firstborn too. So nobody was asking me, are you okay? Are you fine? What's going on? My dad's burial was on my head. I did everything myself. Just a lot of wahala was just going on. So anyway, 2020, 21, 22, 23, then 23, 24, around 1st January. I was like still navigating grief, then I lost a friend who were all both hustling in this America. He died. I said, ha. So I was trying to understand and I said, okay, what does
Wow.
grief really mean? What is the meaning of grief? Like what am I going through? Because this person we were hustling together, trying to get our EB1 thing together, we're all hustling, and then he just fell sick. His parents tell him to come back to Africa to see if they can train him, treat him the African way. He goes back to Africa. I'm calling him, hey, you come back now. When you come back now, we'll see everything will be fine. Don't worry. He goes back to home and he never comes back. And so I'm now asking myself, what's the purpose of all this hustling and all this trying to understand what's hustling in life and then ending up dying at the same time? Then the whole new grief started coming again. And then I said, I want to understand what this grief really means. Now, I've not really had time to mourn my brother or mourn my dad, and then have a friend that passed away. So it was just all in my head. So I went back to my computer and I pulled up the book I wrote almost 5 years ago. And then I said, maybe I should publish this book and just see, maybe it will help me understand grief better. So I said I brought back the book again. At that time, the book was called Peter, my brother's name. So I was trying to rewrite and readjust and rebrand it. That was when I remembered, oh, his Igbo name is Onwuchekwa, death waits. And then in life, actually, even though the name was supposed to tell death to hold on for him, to keep him longer. But the irony happened. But in real life, the truth is death waits for everybody. It might not be today, might not be tomorrow. Someday, somebody's time is going to come. And when that
Absolutely.
death will take you. So that's what I try to just remind myself and every other person reading the book that are also dealing with grief. It's like, death is something that everybody will go through. It might come sooner, it might come later, but someday it's going to come. So however we live our lives, however we try to understand our life, however we try to deal with the grief that we have is just depending on we as individuals, whether or not you deal with it or not, death will always come. So it's best for you to just deal with it and learn how to. So the book generally just, in a nutshell, just tells people that even though you've lost somebody or you've not lost anybody, grief is different. So when you read the book, you learn from my own perspective how I try to navigate grief, and maybe that will help somebody else, to navigate grief, and also to understand the power and meaning of names. Just like my own name too is Nnamdi. My father is present, but unfortunately, my father is not alive anymore. So it's ironical. But me now, as a child of God, now I'm saying, okay, well, my father on earth is not here anymore. My father in heaven is present. So Nnamdi, my father is present. So God is always present in my
Absolutely.
life, whether or not my father on earth is present or not. So that's what the book generally is about: grief, loss, death, life, and just holding on to God and understanding the power of names that we're bearing. So yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing because we just
Yes.
nailed it, dead weight, regardless of, how long we think
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna be on this earth, having putting myself in your situation, having lost my dad and I lost a
Mm-hmm.
younger sister growing up,
Mm-hmm.
I can equally relate to what exactly you went through. And
Mm-hmm.
it may not be the same scenario, but
Mm-hmm.
I can tell that, I finally had to make peace with death. That
Mm-hmm.
was when I lost my dad that I made peace with death. Even before my dad left, I saw it in my dream that I'm going to lose my dad. And I
Mm-hmm.
called home, called my mom and said, "Where is my dad?" He said he's not around. I said, "I know he passed. You guys didn't want to tell me because he came to my dream and revealed to me that he has left. But nonetheless, in Igbo culture, as we say,
Mhm.
the young will bury the old.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes.
young will bury the old. That's not. It's not a bad thing for the children to bury their younger ones.
Yep.
However, it's challenging for the parents to bury the young. So I can equally relate to you about the death of your brother growing
Sibling,
up and
yes.
having shared the same birthday and having done pretty much things together. That memory and that loss is always going to be there. It's always going to be present there. But nonetheless, I'm glad that you were able to share your experiences, tell your story. It could be a lesson. It could be a very good memo for people to
Mm-hmm.
read to be able to know how to manage their pain or know how to manage debt when they find it. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you
So,
so
Dr.
much.
Tomi, on your book, you say something about fire. You
Yes.
said something about faith, fire, and favor. I want you to highlight on these three pillars. I know you did say something about it earlier, but I'd like to know, how did your faith anchor you through the deepest Wahala seasons, as we call it?
Ooh, well, I just want to point out some things. I really think that this meeting is divine because I didn't know all of us were firstborns.
Mm.
So that is very pivotal. And, God works in mysterious ways. He knows how to
Mm-hmm.
work everything out. And I remember you, Mr. Collins, said that you lost, your sister, and she's the only girl. So imagine
Yes,
that even
it
comes
is.
even deeper for your
Mm-hmm.
mom. Um, and now left with boys and like, okay, my daughter. So, and I can also say even me growing up, my mom, she lost two siblings. She was the only girl. She grew up in a polygamy household. So just looking at like generational, when I had to write this book, I started digging in my family tree,
Mm-hmm.
so like even before you start the introduction chapter, you'll see, my family, my mom, my dad, trying to trace back. Sadly, since my dad has passed away, I can't trace a lot of his stuff. My
Mm-hmm.
mom is still alive. So, I try to ask her a question, okay, great grandma, what happened here? How did this person die? And things like that. And when you look at your family tree, you can see patterns,
Mm-hmm.
of cycles that you have to break. And because you're
Absolutely,
firstborn,
yes.
nobody has did it before, but God has. So going back to my faith, so many times, going back, I can't remember off my head, but with the disciple that fought with God, and all night, like, no, you got to bless me, you got to help me
Mm-hmm.
out, like I've
Mm-hmm.
had many
Yes,
of those conversations with God, like, God, look, there's a lot of trifling evil people out there that can be going through this wahala.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't need to be like, I'm not perfect, but I'm better than these people out here
Yeah.
that's acting
that's
a
true.
fool. But and God would tell me, look, and he would point me to a situation. I love God because in his still way, I will open up a scripture and I'm like, oh, wow. And he's like, you lost somebody. He said, I gave you my only begotten son that died a bloody death, naked on the cross, beaten. Like he said,
Exactly.
every pain that you're going through, I've been through it times 100 and I still came out. He died, but he rose on the third day. He said, look at the end. He said, you will always come out victorious.
Amen.
So
Amen.
that's
Indeed.
where the cycle of it starts off with faith, but you're going to go through life is fire. Everybody, Wahala and Nigerian Pidgin English, why I like both of our books is that we stay true to our Nigerian roots. I was born and raised in the US, but in my household, I tell people, I said, and you'll find that in my Wellness and Wahala book. When people came in my household, it's like you're in a Nigerian embassy. Like you're going to be hearing people speak Yoruba, Nigerian Pidgin. My mom is half Benin. I have uncles that that are Igbo. You're gonna hear different languages coming in the house. Uncle Emeka. The Giwa Mus. Everybody. They're gonna be there and showing so much love. After church, we'll have get-togethers when we were growing up. Mommy's, the smell of jollof rice and assorted and goat meat and
Yeah.
plantain.
Yeah.
Me and my sisters were down on the ground and they're teaching us that Yoruba Ayo game. And my grandma came from Nigeria because it was expensive for us to be in daycare, so she came to help take care of us. And when she was babysitting us, she was helping a lot of the migrant children, a lot of my mom's friends and family that came to the US that were struggling at that time. My grandma, you know babysitting them for free. So we're in the house, we always grew up, and she only spoke Yoruba to us, to make sure that, oh, we understand our language, we understand our culture. So even like a lot of my family, when I first went to Nigeria for the first time, and they're like, oh, oh boy, Yoruba, that. I said, yes, my boy. I said, most so dear. I can't speak it as well, but I understand it well, thanks to my parents and to my grandma. Like literally, like you come in our house, even my American friends, when they come, they see my mom if it's in the morning, Ekaroma, like they have to kneel down. We have to teach my American friends, whether you black, white, Filipino, like when you enter my house, this is Africa. Like my parents, you gotta respect our culture. You can't be calling her,
You got
oh,
to bring it on.
yeah, Tomi's mom or Mercy, or her name. No, you can't call her mommy or call her, auntie, like, but really mommy. And the same respect when I go to my friend's house, I tell them that's our culture. So so just speaking on that point, we stay deep rooted into our culture. Like it's one thing to tell your story, but because we're in America, a lot of people like to downplay our story and try to, blend it in with the American culture. My name is Oluwatomiloba, like I can't hide where I come from. So I am very proud that you know, he could have named his book just Death Awaits.
Mhm.
He paid homage. So I don't want I want our viewers to get that point like very, very clearly, that we stay true to our roots in this book.
Mhm.
And that's why all of you all should get our book, write us a 5-star review, help spread the word. It goes a long way to supporting us and supporting, more importantly, other people that are suffering in silence,
Mhm.
Yes,
because
exactly.
that's what, and also a lot of us, and you guys are firstborns, that you can attest to. There's a lot of things that we go through, but we have to take it in and pretend and smile because we want to make sure that our younger ones, don't suffer. Do you understand? And
Mhm.
it's on our shoulders. If you look at family trees and generational cycles and patterns, even when I was writing my memoir, I was reading other people's memoirs. And if you look at cycles of people that, for example, if they did not keep their faith in God and they said, okay, I'm gonna follow the street life. That street life ended them in jail or in dead, and or and when they took that same type of person in the same type of similar neighborhood, but they followed the wrong track, they ended up creating generational cycles of like murderer, prisoners, prostitutes, and then they took somebody else who was from that same neighborhood, but he didn't come from no rich family. I think he was a teacher. You know what I'm saying? So he went to school. He became, kept his faith up. Then from being a teacher, he became a pastor, a chaplain. They looked at his family tree, and when they looked at his family tree, he birthed like 3 presidents. Do you understand? In his family tree, directors, doctors, lawyers. You understand? And there was nothing that was different though, other than he kept his faith intact in in the midst of all the Wahala fire that you're going through. And because of that, God let him and his generations after him receive favor. So that person might not be alive today, but his children, his children's children are reaping the seeds of what it is. Hence why I said, okay, I can't procrastinate enough. That's why we need to put out this book for such a time as this, because people are going through a lot of Wahala. And I want them to know that, look, you are not alone, and that
That's
we
true.
have been through it and we have overcome it. When I lost my dad, I was like, God, just like Nnamdi said, you go to other funerals, you hear from other people, but it doesn't hit you until it hits you with somebody that's close to you. And then you're like, oh, wow. I'm like, okay, this life, you're stressing over small stuff, but
Yeah,
we have the gift of life because we don't know tomorrow. Nnamdi
absolutely.
just literally just said he was talking to his brother, and
Yeah,
then somebody else now calls, and you're like,
so
what is this?
true.
You understand what I'm saying? Even my dad, that morning, I felt it even before he died. I was going to church and I felt it. And I said, and I was in Abuja at that time, and I told my pastor, I said, my dad is really sick. I really feel that he's gonna go. I need to go fly to Lagos. And he now said, no, you're in God's house. You need to pray and don't worry that. And when he prayed, and I looked at him and I knew what he meant, and he was just like, and I said, I want you to pray for God to reverse it, because I just had God just touched me, and I knew that my dad's spirit was going. At that moment, I know my dad's spirit was going, and I felt that he came to me. And I told my pastor, and I said, no, I need you to pray to reverse it, And even the week before, I fought with my dad because I think he knew he was going, and he now told me, I want to bless you, in the Nigerian way, as my firstborn. I want to bless you, and I'm passing the baton to you. And I said, no, I'm passing it back. I said, Dad, what are you talking? You're supposed to be fasting and praying for God to get you better. You're talking about passing the baton. So I was fighting him, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not, God is the same God that raised Jesus after he was dead for 3 days. So, I mean, he's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. So that's what we should be praying. That whatever the doctors are saying, we're going to cancel that.
Amen. Amen.
And we praying for resurrection. But however, even when you're going to that Wahala, we don't know God's ways and we don't know the reasons for it. But I guess my
That's
dad
true.
was making peace because he knew, and I was like, no, and instead of me to be like, okay, let me, I was young then, so I was like, I couldn't take it in, but I wish if I can do it over again and be like, okay, use every chance I got to spend more time with him, because he knew, and he was like, Tomi, I'm a child of God. I'm at peace. Like, I'm gonna bless you. Now he's like, I have ran my race. Like, you have to do the rest. And I'm like, no, Dad, like, I need you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're the man. And I said, yes, I'm a firstborn, but I need that covering as a man because it's me and my sisters. I said, we need that covering. And that's why, sorry to be emotional, I said I was going to be emotional, but, and he said some key words which resonated with me, that even when you lose your earthly father, just like you said, we have our heavenly father. So that
Absolutely.
you make peace with that Wahala. But it took a while, because even our Heavenly Father, I fought with him. Like, why would you let this happen to me? Like, you supposed to be my father of all father, the king of all king. My name literally means Oluwatomiloba. God is sufficient as my king. You're my father. You're my king. So why wouldn't you resurrect my father so it can be a miracle to the doctors and all his enemies? Like, look, his father in heaven did a miracle. He healed him. He raised him from his, his death sentence of his medical diagnosis. And, and I didn't get that answer. And, but I have the peace that, that my dad, he made peace. And, and I believe that, of course, because we're believers, we will see them later when we get to heaven. But those are like the wahalas that and the fire. So that's why I said faith, fire, and favor, but I didn't let that stop me. So of course, when you're down, you're like, especially being the firstborn, we don't have time to get out and grieve and continue to, just wally and complain or whatever. We gotta wipe our tears. We gotta, get on our knees and pray. We gotta
Absolutely.
strategize, talk about
Absolutely.
strategizing, prioritizing, in the midst
Absolutely.
of losing jobs, in the midst of going through divorce, in the midst of being deployed to different countries. I still have to maintain it well so I can be okay for my family. I can be okay for my daughter. I can perform well at work and go above and beyond and get awards and so many honors. But in the inside, I'm still suffering while I'm smiling, as Femi Kuti say in his famous Afrobeat songs, suffering and smiling. So I think that all of us are on a diplomatic journey because as Nnamdi book says, going back to his book, and that's why I think all of our stories are interconnected, is that we are we are not at our permanent home. Like, you know what I'm saying? We are ambassadors. That's why God said we are ambassadors for Christ. I really didn't understand that scripture until I became a diplomat. When you're a diplomat, you represent your nation. When you have a U.S. ambassador or a Nigerian ambassador in another nation, he is representing the president. He got that nation on his shoulder. You understand what I'm
Absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely. That's the responsibility that comes with
That's
it.
the responsibility. So,
Yep.
and then when we now look at it, we are diplomatic ambassadors here on the journey. We are representing God here on this earth. You understand? For such a time as this, using our time, talent, and treasure. And it's important that we tell our story. I love Chiamanda. I used one of her African proverbs and quotes in it. If you don't tell the story, you're gonna justify the hunter or the colonizer. He gonna tell the enemy's gonna tell your story, but it's not gonna be the correct story. Do you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
who else to tell your story than yourself? So I'm very happy that to share this panel, with Nnamdi, who is a movie producer, and even, for him to share his memoir. I even think this memoir can lead to a movie because is that powerful. And it takes a lot to write about the wahalas of your life because you have to reopen those wounds. You understand? Many of us, we close those wounds and we just box it up and be like, okay, I'm not going to deal with it. Even though you've healed, you've been through the process and all of that, but to reopen it again and to talk about it is a lot. And and
Absolutely.
why are we doing it? We're doing it so we can make a difference in others that are suffering in silence, going through the same fire wahala trials that we're going through. But over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. What I can really make out of all this is having faith in God, that with God, everything is possible, regardless of your situation. Like, there's always a proverb that I knew while growing up. They say a man was crying that he does not have any shoes until he came across another man without legs. Then he stopped crying and said, God, I will never cry anymore for shoes again. So regardless of our situations that we have been through, everybody has a story, but it takes a lot for somebody to be vulnerable and open to tell their own story so that others can learn from that story and be able to take those hard lessons learned or experiences to be able to build their life. I really appreciate you guys' effort by coming out, telling your stories, trying to use it as a tool to help those that are going through some difficult position. So now I'm coming to you. I know on your own, you talked about reflection of grief and as well as, death and how you were able to cope, having multiple deaths in the family. being all there for your family and trying to still survive in such a very challenging country, being a student and the rest of them. I would say, how did faith guide you through that journey of loss, understanding mortality?
I mean, um, honestly, at first it was very hard, because again, like I said, when people go through stuff and you are on the sideline and you see them going through stuff, it doesn't really like hit you. It doesn't really like, there's a separation at first. Then when you're the one going through, because when people go through stuff and they say things like, "Oh, where was God? Where was God? Where, and you're like, don't say that thing, don't say that thing, don't say that thing. You that are saying don't say that thing, you don't really understand what they are going through. You're saying
Absolutely.
it from the perspective of an
Yeah.
audience, and you're saying as a Christian, oh, don't say that thing is wrong. Don't say it. The person going through that thing knows exactly what's making them ask those questions that can come out as, blasphemous or something like that. So I didn't really
Mm,
understand that till I also like say I went through what I went through. And at first, like the first time when I lost my brother, it was just a thing of like I was just like, why? This boy did not do anything. Like, why would he just, and he died in the most horrible way ever. He drowned in a pool. That's the kind of death that even till now, when I think about it, I just get so angry and offended and just really mad because I can't even imagine the struggle, everything what he had to go through in that water. And it was a pool that had like 30 people in it. How were they there and watch this boy drown and couldn't do anything about it? Like, how do you even drown
mm,
in a pool filled with 30 people? How? Like, that's like, even till now, I don't even, if as I'm talking to you now, my body is just filled with so much like, I don't know what shivers. I'm just like, cold shivers are running through my spine now because I can't even imagine him being there struggling to survive, and people are just there in the pool. He didn't do anything about it. And sadly, he went there with his friends, and what did the friends do about it? Like, so the whole thing is just very complex.
Yeah.
So I found myself asking God so many questions like, why? Like, why this boy didn't do anything to deserve this kind of thing? My one thing my mom was doing every time, which even I put in the book too. Every time, even till this very day, she has a picture of my brother that she puts in a Bible. Every every year of his death, she opens that Bible and she takes anointing oil and she just like anoints his picture. Every year she does that. I don't know why she does that. Maybe in her mind she's trying to, maybe that's her own way of asking God, like, wow, why did you take this boy away from me? Okay, no problem. Oh, protect him wherever he is. I don't know why she does that, but um, so in that whole period for me, going back to the idea of faith, like I guess it was a two-way thing. At first, I didn't really understand. I asked too many questions. I fought with God a lot of times. But at the same time, again, what else would I have done? I couldn't bring him back to death. If tears could bring back that boy, I'm sure my tears, only my own tears alone, could have brought him back. Then imagine my tears, my mother, my sister, all of us. He could have been
can imagine.
resurrected.
I can
You
imagine.
understand?
Yeah. It's
So, but tears couldn't bring
quite
him back.
painful.
Exactly. Tears was not enough to bring him back. So I couldn't do anything about I couldn't control it. The only thing I could do was just to hold on to God, knowing that He said, God, they say God gives and God takes. So my consolation was, okay, maybe something could have happened to him in the future that God prevented by taking him back. Maybe, maybe something, I don't know, whatever it is. So I just had to use that to, as they say in Igbo language, to where I wake Karubi, to hold on, to hold my heart
Yeah.
and put my heart together. So that's how faith played in that part in my brother's death. Then in my own, when I lost my dad, man, I'm not going to lie to you, that period was one of the most, in fact, I tell myself if I was able to survive that period, I don't think anything can ever shake me in this life because
Absolutely.
I'm going to be, since I'm okay. Oh my gosh. I'm
All right,
trying not
take
to
it
cry. I
easy.
don't want to
Don't worry,
cry.
take it easy. That's
Um,
okay.
because you ask yourself like things like
This is
It's
this is
okay.
part of
It's
that
okay.
healing. It's part
Yeah.
of that healing process, and at the same time, like I said, your book tells it all. It's a very when you share life stories, you can't avoid shedding tears.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
part. You
Yeah.
cannot avoid shedding tears. It's part of healing. It's absolutely part of healing. Part of making peace, accepting what is beyond your control, and
Yes.
putting your faith in God. God is the ultimate healer. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. So you ask yourself, like, how can one person just deal with all of this? Like, it's just too
Yes.
much, you know?
Too much
It's too
Wahala.
much for one person to deal with. Like, you're trying to be a better person in this country, try to hustle, struggle, and then, this happens and all of that. So it's like, why would I be going through this? It's too much for me to bear. Like, it's just a lot for me to bear. I'm not going to lie to you. That was the first time I actually, like, contemplated, suicide, because I was tired. I was exhausted. I was like, this is just too much, And the only one thing that just made me not to do it was because of my mom. Because I knew that if I lose myself, she would not, she wouldn't survive it. That would have been her death sentence. She would have just. I've never told anybody this before because it's always hard for me to talk about it, but it's just the truth. That period, I wanted to just, like, I was just tired. I was exhausted because I was hustling, trying to, like, take care of myself, and I had my mom, my sister, my brother, and I had, and everything was just going haywire. And I said, okay, let me just die and just go, because it's just too much. But then again, I was like, if I do this thing, that my mother is there. If she hears that her son passed away in America, she wouldn't even think about it too much. She would just drop dead instantly, and that was it. And just of what use would it be to have two people go at the same time and leave my younger brother, my younger sister alone in this world with nobody to take care of them? So that was the only one thing um that was the one thing that made me not to go ahead with that. And I just went back again and I just started praying and I cried and I was like, God, please, there's the only you have the only your comfort and your your peace is just the only thing that I need that would help me go through this challenge, and that period. And that's what I just kept telling myself, and truthfully, I don't know how I was able to make it. People just helped me. I had people coming sending money for the funeral. Because I was just going to school. I didn't have all the money. You know how it is back in Nigeria, burying somebody.
Yeah.
The firstborn,
absolutely.
it's
Burials are expensive in Nigeria
it's
than
very
than birthday parties.
expensive.
Yes.
And in my own
That's
case,
true.
my dad left the village at a very young age, so he was his age grade group. He didn't fulfill his duties at in the age grade or whatever. So when he passed
Yeah.
away, they didn't want to bury him. They asked me to pay
Pay
the
food
money he was
fees. They come
owing.
up with all types of village
Absolutely.
So
fees.
all the
Yep.
money he was owing since
Same thing with my dad.
1982. I wasn't even born then. My
Yeah.
mother and my dad never even met in 1982. So I paid from 82 to 2020, all the money. I paid everything, the land, and then they went to his compound. Turns out I found out that my dad's dad is Cameroonian, and the land where they wanted to bury him was his mother's new husband's compound, and they couldn't bury him there. They had to go and bury him. They told us to go and bury him in his father's compound, which is in Cameroon, and nobody knows where that is. They don't know where the man, because the man left at a young age. So it was just chaotic, and they had to bury him in our house in the village, my dad's house in the village. So it was a lot of things happened, plus, they accused my mother of killing my dad, my father's people, just a lot of, that
A
was
lot
happening
of
that period.
craziness.
So
Yeah.
it was just chaotic. So
Mm.
the only thing that we were able to hold on to was just to hold on to our faith in God, and believing that God was going to come through for us. So that was just how, because there
Absolutely.
was no other way I could have done it. Man would not do it, friends would not do it. It was just God. So you just, in
Absolutely.
being rebellious at the same time, um, the rebellion came from not understanding the challenges and just how how one person was going to be able to deal with all of this. But on the flip side, when the rebellion happened, and in being rebellious, you find a way to just, like, okay, you know what? I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry for saying what I said, but what will I have done? I'm only human, and
That's true.
found, hold on to God. And my mom being very religious and very, very prayerful. She was one that encouraged me and said, well, just God is the one that is there, nobody else, and everything. And then we just hold on to God. And somehow, this peace from nowhere just comes and helped me. I'm not going to lie, even though through the challenges, if you ask me till this very day how I was able to survive both emotionally, financially, mentally from that period my dad passed away till this very day I'm talking to you now, till today now, I can't tell you. I don't know how that happened. So I can only attribute it to the faith that I had in God and just God's, again, like my name, Nnamdi, my father is present. It just shows me that
Absolutely.
God has always been present, because I won't lie to you, without God, I'm not, I told you I almost took my life. It was God that came through. I don't know how that happened, that just changed that thing from my head and just tarnished that mindset. And, so I'm just very grateful.
Absolutely. That is really amazing. Like I said, in Igbo culture, they say someone's name actually leads the person. When they say
Yes.
Nnamdi means, your God is still alive. And Dr. Tomi herself, Oluwatomiloba means, God, my God is sufficient enough. It's something that God will always, use to carry us along. So coming on your part, Dr. Tomi, I know you talked about, the hardest truth to write and as well as the most healing. I know it's kind of vulnerable when you write a memo. How were you able to find a balance to be able to handle both issues?
Well, as my co-author, the other author that that just spoke, I think Nnamdi said it all. Is the foundation of everything starts with faith. That's why it's faith, fire, favor on diplomatic duty. I went through a lot of Wahala fires, but God put out every one of them. I can relate with Anamdi where, I would just say, God, look, I'm tired. Like, I don't think I'm gonna make it to tomorrow. This is too much. And God will remind me, I got your back. Weeping may endure the night, but joy comes in the morning. And, of
Amen.
course, for my daughter too, which I dedicate the book to her, and it's because many times I'm like, God, I have to stay strong. I have to break these cycles. I have to, try so she, will have a better life. And when my family was torn and my dad was deported, but even before then, my dad and my mom was having marital problems, separated. I always pray like, God, I'm gonna break that cycle. I'm gonna marry someone that's good, and I'm not gonna get divorced. I'm gonna have a stronger family. And sadly, no, I did not. To the point that when I got married, and the happiest moment, when you give birth to a child, and instead of my then ex-husband staying by my side, he lied and said, oh, that his paternity leave was not approved, even though it was approved by his boss. And the boss knew me and was like, oh no, I'll make sure you get a couple of more weeks paid so you can stay with your wife in the US, because at that time I was deployed working in Nigeria, but I came back to the US, Chicago, to my hometown to have my daughter. And instead of him being there by my side, he goes to London cheating and doing all types of stuff. I have not even healed in my pain. I was in labor from Saturday to Sunday. I actually had her on Palm Sunday, the same Sunday of my grandmother's birthday. So my daughter was born on my grandmother's birthday. My grandmother, who we were very close to, that came to the U.S. And that stayed and took care of us. So that was another death that hit me hard. And having my daughter, born a few weeks early on my grandmother's birthday, that's also another sign of favor from God. You know, and one of her names, your by name, Yewande, is like, Mama has come back. You understand? Because she was born on her birthday, and also that's why her middle name and my grandma's name, Morolape, my wealth is complete. I named her my grandmother's middle name, and
That
and
is really nice. Beautiful
so
name.
so that's how God like showed me favor in the situation of also losing my grandmother, who I was close to and loved dearly, in the midst of going through, a terrible divorce. But then of course healing from that, because you got to heal and forgive the people that hurt you. And then now, I found somebody that does love me, that does have my back, who I also, talk about. And my book, it goes deep, but I don't go into too many details because, of course, I like to protect a lot of the people that are close to me. And because I did a lot of diplomatic work in different countries, I can't go into deep details of like my tour of duty, but I can just give you like the general overview of
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
warfare, discrimination,
Yep.
racism, oppression, and all of the things that I went through.
Sleepless nights and the rest of it, the challenges.
Sleepless nights,
Yep.
and the nights struggling with God, like, God, oh, where are you? In the midst of all of this. So I would say that, this book is going to help everybody. Like, it's my story, but I believe all of us are interconnected. Like, all of us are part of the body of Christ. You understand? And all of us are ambassadors on this journey representing God's will here on earth as it is in heaven, using our
Exactly.
own time and our talent and our treasure. So all of us have our unique gift for the time period that He put us here on this earth. But at the end of the day, we are representing Him, and we have to stay strong. Even in the time where I'm at my weakest, God always has come through. So in times when I do want to give up, I can go through those Wahala situations. I can look at Nnamdi and so many other people through their stories and be
Absolutely.
like, wow, look at him.
And learn
He's
from
still,
it.
learn from it. He's still standing. He's still writing, award-winning, books, memoirs. He got so many awards, being placed in film festivals. How could
That's
you,
true.
excuse me, continue to have the courage to go on? So even when um, you look up, and that's why I believe the importance of telling your story and the importance of writing your story is because
Hmm.
nobody knows your story better than you. You understand?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
So
are the
I'm
only one that can tell your story and tell it even better than anybody
yes.
else.
So I'm very happy for the opportunity to share this story. And of course, everybody, please go out and get it. It's on pre-order
Absolutely.
now. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Kobo, most major places. I'm also working with a printer in Nigeria because I want it to be also accessible in some of the major bookstores in Nigeria and also in
Absolutely.
Ghana by God's grace. So then also I want to donate it to some of the universities there because um, I think even as a student, I wish I had books like this to read because it's more relatable.
Yes,
Um,
that is actually one of the questions that I have for you. That irrespective of the challenges and all the stuff that you went through, and you decided to write a book, you still want to use that book as a medium to give back to the society. What an amazing story to tell in that situation. How were you able to come up with such kind of idea in order to be able to still yet let me use my challenges as well to give back to the society. Let me tell my experience in form of a book and at the same time still use it as a fund to support various organizations.
yes. So in everything that I do, like I want to be able to leave a seed because as um, we all know, uh, it's a legacy, it's your name, it's what you've done, even when you pass away, is what my dad, what my grandmother has done, their memories and the legacy and the seeds that they sown that still lives on. So that's why one of the reasons for my book, a percentage of the sales is going to my foundation, Reliable Women and Youth Empowerment Foundation. So I support a lot of internally displaced people back in Nigeria. I partner with a foundation called Radi Foundation, Resilient Aid Development Initiative. I've also partnered with some NGOs and some schools and giving scholarships, and even for the launch of my book. So my book is launching on August 5th, which is my birthday. So, and every time I drop a new episode of Wellness and Wahala podcast, is actually on a Wednesday. I was born on a Wednesday. And so my gift to the community and to the world, because this book is not just about, putting out my story, but it's also about touching the lives and helping people. So I'm actually doing a giveaway through my Wellness and Wahala Fund and Foundation, Reliable Women and Youth Empowerment Foundation. So, because right now things are not as financially buoyant as I want it to be, but even in the midst of having, hardship, I still give. I still try to tithe and pay my offering, with the little I have. Even, if I'm on unemployment, I take a little, if I see a homeless person and they need help, they in a worse situation than me, I'm still going to try to give, and God will always
Absolutely.
provide. And all that situation that I give, God just miraculously pays for all my bills, and money, just comes up. So I'm also doing a giveaway with my book. I tell people, to like, to share, and if you're in the US, pre-order, write and send me a testimony, 30 seconds, 1 minute of how you've overcome Wahala in your life. And 2 winners in the US will win $50 gift card, or I can Zelle it, depending on, how they want it, PayPal, Cash App. And then in Nigeria, I'm going to choose 3 people with 50,000 Naira prize. And
Amazing.
5 significant of my birthday, because I was born on the 5th, and the Hebrew biblical meaning of 5 in the Bible is grace, that God has
Amazing.
shown me a
Amazing.
lot of grace despite a lot of the Wahala. So I'm also doing a giveaway. So that's my birthday gift for others, is to pre-order my book. But my gift to others is to try to do this giveaway, that in the midst of everything that I do, I still try to keep it positive. And at the end of the day, the goal of the book is not just telling my story, is how my story can relate to others that are going through Wahalas and lift them up. There's times when
Amazing.
I was a single mom, and I remember one incident, I didn't put it in my book, but that's it. If I was to share all the stories, I'll be writing forever. Let me just put it like that. But one of the
Absolutely.
great stories, I remember, I can never forget, I was at Walmart, and I rung my card, and my card got declined, and I was in tears. And my daughter was there, and I was so embarrassed, and I told the lady, I was like, oh, let me step out the cart. And there were people in the line, and, they were having an attitude like, oh, she's taking long. And I just told the lady, I'm like, oh, don't worry. I'm like, I don't need it anymore. And then when we got in the car, the lady was like, the cashier was actually trying to be patient and said, well, don't worry about the people in the line. Just, take out, and let's see if we put your card through, if it'll go. And even when I put it down, again, it got declined, even though it was a lower number. So my daughter looked at me and said, Mommy, don't worry. I have some money in my piggy bank at home. And let's open my piggy bank, and we'll get the groceries. And I said, no. I said, we'll just get groceries for you, what you need. And she said, no, Mom, you always give and you always help others. Let me help you. And I don't even think she was up to like 7 then or whatever. And I was just so touched that
It's all right.
at such a young age, especially as firstborns, we're so used to giving. It's very, very rare for people to give to us. So I just thank God, because she alone, like, that's why she lives up to her name. And I talk about a lot of my family names and their meanings, and how all of it, all the pieces come together. Like, it wasn't by accident God named you Nnamdi. I'm going to be with you. Other people might go, sadly, but I'm going to be with you. God said, look, I am sufficient as your king, even when your bank account ain't enough, even when people abandon you and hurt you. I am
Absolutely.
sufficient. I got your back. Like, for them to
Absolutely.
name me that um, was powerful. And even the miracle of conceiving me, I talk about that. But when we went to go get the money out her piggy bank and we came back and and my daughter was so happy, told the cashier, I told you I was gonna help my mom, and the lady was so proud. And I have now like been able to pay that forward. Like that was a painful situation for me. And I have been to grocery stores where I've seen people in line and they could not pay. And I'm like, okay, what's
Absolutely.
the balance? I got it. So that's why I tell people, like, when you go through a situation, it's something for you to lift out of. But when God blesses you and he puts somebody else in front of you, there were so many people in line. Instead, they were having an attitude, looking down at me, laughing at me. Nobody offered to say, let me help this lady and her daughter. My daughter said, Mom, let's go home and and I'll take the money out of my piggy bank, my savings. So it just shows you in life, God will always make a way. But we should never
Absolutely. It's
forget when we
yes.
go through Wahala that, and that's why I'm doing this giveaway. Like, despite the Wahala, there's people that's going through 100 times worse. There's people that their entire family, they get a phone call, God forbid, and their entire family has been wiped out. Like, what do you say? I talked to another colleague. Yes, we both got laid off, but she's going through cancer treatment. Like she she's fighting for her life, her health. Like I can't I can't complain when somebody's going through even more hell. You understand what I'm saying?
That's true.
And
That's
even
true.
more medical problems. And this is an African person who, as you said, you have family back at home. She's the oldest. She got her younger brother here. She got her mom back at home. All of that doesn't stop. So in the midst of trying to get medical treatment, you now also have to take care of trying to pay your bills without having a job. And a lot of us are overqualified, have doctors, have masters. It don't matter because what we have and we live in this culture, just our names alone, people discriminate. You can be the most qualified. It's really just having God. Even the jobs that I've had, it was God that put me in those rooms. Many times I talked in the book, I'm having diplomatic meetings. I look around, these are ambassadors, these are ministers, everything. I'm the only female in the room, and I'm the only black. You know what I'm saying? Unless it's like an African nation, but if it's without that, I'm literally like when we're having strategic meetings, and I look around, and I'm like, oh wow, God has put me here for such a time as this. And sometimes you're in those rooms, and you necessarily don't agree with the ideologies and the policies, and God put you there for a reason to speak up and say, okay, what you're doing is there's a better way to do it. You understand? But it takes a lot of courage. So um, this book is just to not only tell my story, but more importantly, is to strengthen a lot of people that are going through 100 times worse of a story of a Wahala, and they don't have people to tell them that, look, God's gonna have that back. I might not be rich, but I'm the widow in the Bible that I'm gonna give you all I have. You know what I'm saying? It might not be much, but I know God will honor it because He knows it's coming out of my own emptiness. You know what I'm saying? Like
Absolutely.
I'm giving out of my lack while
Yes.
other people have abundance and they don't give, or they're doing it
Absolutely.
just so they can get a tax write-off, but it's not genuine from the heart. I'm giving from my heart because I know $50 goes a long way. That can help somebody get some groceries. That can help somebody put some gas in their car. It can do
Absolutely.
something from
You,
somebody that's totally struggling.
absolutely. Thank you very much. I mean, you really said it all. And I only have two things to tell you because I know giving is something that is based biblically. Even I believe in the Acts of Apostles, where I believe Acts 20 by 35, where St. Paul was quoting about Jesus Christ. And Paul said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. So it is very deep rooted in the Holy Bible that we use to worship God Almighty. And God has always been a very cheerful giver. No matter the situation of things that we go through, God knows about it. Is he gonna act? We don't know. Is he not gonna act? We don't know. Because God's own time is his own time. Nobody can knows or predict God's time. And when God does something, you will know that God is doing it. Miraculously, something you never expected. the least of the least where you never expected is where that thing is going to come from. So thank you for writing your book and thank you for all that you've been doing. And thank you and continue to give as much as you can. Continue to give. Writing a book is also giving. People don't know that because you are actually sharing life experiences that can help some other people heal. And you don't know how many millions of people that is gonna touch their life in the future and help them to heal. So continue to give and never lose hope. No matter the challenges of life, God will always bless his own people. God never fails. He didn't fail us when we were grown up. Why do you think he's going to fail us right now? He didn't fail us when we were in our mother's womb. Why do you think now that God will fail us when we're alive? So that's the thing I always encourage people to do. Never, never lose hope. But God only the one that knows the answer to everything. We human beings, we will not. But God is the only one. Coming on your part, Nnamdi, I know you wrote something about the book. You call it pretty much Onwuchekwa, which has to do with the Igbo culture. You know, why is it so important, that name, to preserve your ancestral voice and identity in writing?
For me, I think it's very important. I think going back to what Dr. Tomi said a few um moments ago about like how her family is very much rooted in the Yoruba culture. Like if you come into her house, it's more like a Nigerian embassy, like she said. How
Yes,
so that's like how they as a family, even though they're in a different country, how they were able to like maintain and uphold their Nigerian heritage, to keep it intact and keep it going. For me, as an artist, I think it's very pertinent that we uphold our culture, particularly for me, the Igbo culture, which of course it was predicted that the Igbo language will go extinct in a couple of years, which is very sad. And with the way the world is changing and becoming more globalized, or however they say it, people no longer speak their languages. People no longer know their dialect. People don't know things about. People don't even know how to pronounce their Igbo names or their Yoruba names or whatever. So there's a shift and things are going, and I do not want to be a part of that. I want to contribute my own quota in upholding our culture, celebrating our culture, and also reminding people of our cultural heritage. So that's why when I was reworking the book before I published, the name I had before was an English name, but I wanted to give a name that people would see and remember, oh, this person is an Igbo person. And also take something that would make people want to ask questions about the culture, something that will make people want to find out more about, like, oh wow, this name, let me know more, let me see more. I also mentioned some things here and there in the book. I also use Igbo language in the book every now and then. And I also mentioned some cultural aspects of our culture in the book. So
amazing, amazing,
and I did that because I wanted people to, when they read and maybe they get to a line that was said in Igbo, they will get curious and they want to find out what it means. And even when they see what it means, they want to do more research to know how it came about, why it was used, and how they can also use it in their own daily lives. So
amazing,
I wanted to just create more curiosity around the Igbo culture because I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to be a part of the few people, you know doing a great work in preserving our culture so that it doesn't die. And also, I feel like there's so much in the Igbo culture that not only the Igbo culture, in the Nigerian culture, there's so much untapped resource. There's so much creative resource. For example, now Dr. Tomi uses Wahala in her book. That's
absolutely,
like one amongst so many Nigerian colloquial language or dialects that people need to know about. Well, now, even today, now, Wahala is used by so many people. Everybody uses Wahala, even Black Americans, Asians,
absolutely,
Americans. Everybody knows
absolutely.
what Wahala means.
Yep,
This popular woman, Dr. Inyala Vanzat, She says Wahala every day.
Yeah,
Wahala, Wahala. Everybody, at some point, I'm sure the dictionary would have Wahala in it at some point
absolutely,
because it's now
absolutely,
becoming a general used term. So imagine having those kind of things in your book and how it also helps to push it more and make it more globally accepted because when they see it in a book, oh wow, it's a book, they want to use it. So that's same thing with my memoir is when you read those things, you hear those things like Onwuchekwa, you hear things like Elowa, or things like you hear I mentioned my village there too in Abia State. You know, when you see all those things, I feel like it will make people to be like, oh wow, let me do more, let me know more about this. Even names like Nnamdi means it. Okay, let me see other Igbo names and know their meanings and how, and who knows, somebody might even see the name and like the name Nnamdi and want to name their kid Nnamdi because they read it in a book and heard the meaning of the name in a book. And now it
absolutely.
resonates with them and they use the name. And before you know it, it keeps on going on and it becomes this whole cycle that just keeps going round and round and round. And before you know it, in one way or the other, we have been able to preserve our culture in the little effort as tiny as just writing a book. So like you said, writing a book in a way is a kind of giving. So for me, in a nutshell, I would say I was using the book to sort of like give
Yes,
my love for the Igbo culture to the audience,
yes,
people that are reading to see it and be like, oh wow, this thing is here, and they can also learn. And also, anybody, people who that are born here that did not get a chance to like learn from, say, from their grandparents, or they didn't get the privilege to meet their grandparents that would help them learn one or two things in our culture. When they read the book, they learn one or two things. They go back and ask their parents or go back and ask Google or whatever, and they keep on learning more to also improve their own, cultural knowledge and literacy, which I think is very powerful. So that's generally just like, I'm one who loves the Igbo culture. I love the Igbo culture so much. Anything I do, my books, my movies, anything, I always find a way to highlight the Igbo culture and by extension, the Nigerian culture, somewhere or the other, because I believe that charity begins at home. And if we want people to celebrate our culture, we need to be the first people to celebrate our culture in our art. So if we celebrate our culture, other people will see us and also, celebrate our culture with us.
amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that explanation. We really, really and deeply appreciate that. Our wonderful listeners, please go and pray order these books. Go and get this book. This book will tell you more. This book will guide you. This book will inspire you. And this book will help you lay a foundation for any situations that you're dealing with. The first book is, it was written by one of the greatest authors, Dr. Tomi Ademokun. And the book is all known as Faith, Fire, and Favor on Diplomatic Duty. The second one is Onwuchekwa, Dead Waits or Awaits, also written by one of our brightest producers, movie artists that we have, Nnamdi Kanaga. Please, these books are solid. It's a lot to learn. They are just giving you like a summary of what is this book. It's deep rooted in culture. It's deep rooted in a lot of stuff. It's deep rooted in faith. You have the Bible verses. You have true life stories to learn from, things that can inspire you, things that will make you see yourself, things that you can relate with. There is one thing about writing a book, and there is one thing about writing a book that relates with a common man. This is a common man story or common people's story, I will call it. Most people have been through these situations. Most people are going to go through it, but not everybody is going to be able to handle it and survive and come out of it. This book is an inspiration. So we are slowly coming to the end of this interview, but one of the last questions that is out there is that I would like each of you to take maybe a few minutes and just, tell us how you were able to turn this pain into power through storytelling, How about, how do you transform this your memo into something of a great foundation, looking forward that you can conquer anything that you see or anything that you come across, please.
Ladies first.
Nnamdi.
That's
Hey,
fine. Absolutely. Go ahead.
well, I will give people a sneak peek into my book. Um, but in the introduction part, I talk about my book, as I said, is Wellness Wahala, but I separate it into three main sections: faith, the foundation; fire, which is the refining process that I went through, the fire Wahala process; and then favor, the restoration. So, and um, in the book, I kept it very, very Afrocentric. As I said, in Nigerian culture, my house, we grew up with the African drums. We listened to Afrobeat, high life music. Um, so in every after every few chapters, so the first four chapters are foundations of faith chapters, and then the next four chapters is fire, and a lot of the fire trials that I went through. And then the last four chapters is favor, the restoration. And then how, I ended the book, I still rounded it up with, great affirmations and African proverbs, and not just Yoruba proverbs, because our culture is so rich in Nigeria. So, I have Igbo proverbs, I have, Edo proverbs, I even have proverbs from other African countries, Zimbabwe and, Congo, like really deep African proverbs. And then also wellness wahala affirmations. Sometimes you just, you have to ginger yourself, So one of the affirmations I says is that, do not compete. I am called, I am crowned, because we are royalty. We are ambassadors for Christ. I am rising from the ashes with royal fire. No system can silence what heaven has spoken over me. My household is covered. My legacy is sealed. Wahala may come. This is one of my favorite, but it will not win. I am a warrior with wellness in my wings. So I try to
Awesome. Amazing.
uplift everybody up. And as I said, every chapter, has like a wellness, wahala, warrior, chant, which is like faith, the scripture. So, one of them is, I'm just reading one chapter at the end. It says, faith, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done for the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. And that's one of my favorite. That's when Joseph was abandoned by his brothers and thrown in prison, and he still came out triumphant and ended up, saving them from a world famine. And then fire. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. That's an African proverb. And meaning that whatever we go through in life, we will always remember it. And then favor, the one who is lifted by God builds with wisdom, not vengeance. You're by proverb. So even when I have been wrongfully done, God says vengeance is his. So I that's why I really can relate to every African proverb, and every scripture. It's all ties together to help promote everybody that reads my book, because I believe everybody is a wellness wahala warrior. And with faith, they will get through the fire and they will come out with favor. So over to you, Sal.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it, especially that verse which you read. You say, Wahala will come, but still, you will never back down. That is amazing. That is really, really huge. And I know, Mr. Kanaga, the ball is now on your court. Tell us how you can round up this up. Like I said, please, our wonderful listeners, make sure you get this book, Wellness and Wahala, Faith, Fire, and Favor on the Diplomatic Duty. The other one is Onwuchekwa, Death
Yes.
Awaits. Please, these books are hard. They are very, very hard. And do not forget, this is coming to you from NIDO Radio South Savannah, Georgia, and as well as Wellness and Wahala podcast. Mr. Kanaga, please give us the last straw on this. Tell us how this book, all the challenges and everything you've been through, were able to inspire you, and how it actually allows you to overcome the challenges of today and looking forward to the best in the future. Thank you.
In a nutshell, I would just say, because I have to go pick up something real quick, but I would say, this book to me is a reminder that, um, as cliche as it sounds, before gold is created, it passes through fire. If you see gold, when you see gold in the original form, it's not what you see. When you now see the original one, when you see gold, when it's finally done, it's all glittering, it's all fine, but it's not always, it goes through a lot before it gets to that point.
Absolutely. It
All
goes
I'm
through a lot.
saying
Yeah.
here in essence is the book reminds me of what it means to go through pain, go through sorrow, go through suffering, and coming out of it, even though it still lingers somewhere, but you know that you've been able to overcome all of this and you're still standing tall, still living, still surviving, still believing, still dreaming, still believing in God, and still processing life as it comes. Onwuchekwa is a reminder that even though death can come and is painful and is hurtful, but at the same time, the people that we've lost are not necessarily away from us. They are still with us, one way or the other. And just
Absolutely.
like they say, grief is love with no place to go. It's just
Yeah.
love with no place to go. But then again, now you know that you have this love. Instead of just letting it go away, you keep it somewhere. And that's what I did with this book. I have
Yeah.
this grief that I'm dealing with, but instead of me just like throwing it away, I put it in the book and I'm giving it to the world to read. So if you're dealing with grief, you've lost someone, or you're losing someone, you're going through pain or whatever, I don't know how to navigate life or navigate what you're going through, read Onwuchekwa and you would understand what it means to be grieving, but at the same time, you learn how to deal with your grief and live with your grief and use that grief to become a better person and better person to the world and a better person to your family. And also, just going back to Dr. Tomi's book too, is all of these books we have done is just telling you that you would go through challenges. Life is not going to be easy. You would definitely go through pain, go through sorrow, go through whatever it is you're going through. But just know that
Absolutely.
all what you're going through, it just makes you become a better person. Now, how you use what you're going through is where the key point is. You might go through all of these things, but at the same time, the point and the main point is just how you're able to go through all these things. And when you survive it, how do you use it? Even when you're going through those things, how do you use those pain, to be a better person to yourself, to your family, and eventually to the world. So yeah. So read Onwuchekwa on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Go and pre-order Wellness Wahala on Amazon. And don't forget to rate it 5 stars because it is good. And the price is even very cheap. It's not even expensive. It's very, very cheap.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So please.
Both of
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Both of them.
exactly.
Absolutely. Those
Yeah.
books are hot.
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nnamdi Kanaga, and as
You
well
said
as
it
Dr.
all.
Tomi Ademokun. I really,
Yes.
really appreciate your time and your wonderful summary of your book. Please, our wonderful and great listeners, take some time, get this book, Wellness and Wahala.
Thank you, sir.
Faith, fire, and what? Faith, fire, and favor on
Yes.
diplomatic duty, and as well as Onwuchekwa. Thank you very much, listeners.
Thank
Once again,
you.
this is your host Collins CK1 coming from NIDO Radio South Savannah, Georgia, and as well as Wellness and Walla podcast. Have a wonderful day and have a wonderful evening. Thank
Thank
you. Have
you.
a good
God
day.
bless you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you.